Here's your coffee.
Oh, thank you. Can I get a straw with that?
Disposable plastic straws are not allowed anymore.
Then can I get a stirring stick for my drink?
Plastic stir sticks are also subject to restriction.
Do you have a plastic bag to carry that?
The use of disposable plastic bags is prohibited too. Customers can no longer pay an extra fee to use plastic bags.
Now is the time to follow the restrictions on disposable products.
The restriction is not just for disposable utensils and plastic bags at stores, but also plastic wrappers for wet umbrellas and single-use plastic supplies used for cheering at concerts.
Our little discomforts
Can bring comfort to the earth.
This campaign is brought to you by BEFM, Busan 영어 방송.
The COVID-19 mask mandate has been lifted for public transportation, including buses, subways, and taxis. It's also been lifted in open space pharmacies within large-scale facilities such as shopping malls and stations. However, please be aware that mask wearing is still required in general pharmacies that are separated by doors or glass walls and in other infection-prone places such as medical institutions, nursing homes, and welfare facilities for people with disabilities. And wearing a mask is still recommended on public transit during crowded rush hours. Since masks have been proven effective, we ask that you practice personal caution and preventative measures so we can return to a new normal as safely as possible. This campaign is brought to you by BEFM, 부산 영어 방송.
The time is now 7 o'clock.
South Korea's homegrown rocket, the Nuri, is set for its launch this evening, and the preparations were stalled yesterday evening due to the sudden showers in Gohung County, but the process resumed after a 2-hour delay. Nuri, its official name, KSLV-2, will take off from the NATO Space Center in Cheonnam at 6:24 p.m. This is the first practical launch of our homegrown rocket, and it will carry several satellites into the Earth's orbit. If all goes to plan, it'll launch the next generation of South Korea's space exploration, and you can be sure that all eyes will be on the Nuri tonight. I'm Catherine. This is Morning Wave in Busan on Wednesday, May 24th on BEFM, 부산 영어 방송.
Begin your day with Morning Wave in Busan.
Good morning, listeners. It is a beautiful Wednesday. We're kicking off this hump day. We're getting ready because, I don't know, it seems so perfect for the launch of the Nuri space rocket. For now, it seems pretty calm. It's a beautiful spring day. Launch preparations saw a temporary setback yesterday due to unexpected showers. However, as of right now, all signs are a go. That's according to the Ministry of Science and ICT and the Korea Aerospace Research Institute, for short, KARI. Yesterday was dedicated to launch preparations as the Nuri left the assembly building yesterday morning. Well, it was transported. It didn't leave on its own. So it was taken to the launch pad at the NATO Space Center in Gohung, Jeonnam Province. The authorities put the rocket in the upright position on schedule, according to schedule. And in the afternoon, KARI scientists connected the umbilical, as they say, to power and fuel the rocket and make sure that there were no leaks in the system. However, there was some rain that fell over Gohung in the evening, and that stalled the process for about 2 hours. The workers had to cover parts of the rocket with plastic to make sure that the rainwater didn't get into the system. Well, at the Nuri Launch Management Committee meeting convened by the Science Ministry last night, the authorities greenlit the launch based on the preparations and weather forecast. The Korea Meteorological Administration forecasts cloudy skies between 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. in Gwon County, where the Naro Space Center is located. So that's for tonight. There is a 20% chance of precipitation and winds of 2 meters per second that really shouldn't affect the launch. And the authorities will convene another meeting this afternoon to inspect, to go over all the technical preparation, to check out the weather conditions, and of course, the chances of collision with space material, and to determine the exact time of the launch. As of the latest report, the launch is set to take place at 6:24 p.m. later this evening. And if all goes according to plan, the Nuri will launch 8 practical satellites into orbit, including the country's second next-generation small satellite and 4 microsatellites developed by the Korea Astronomy and Space Science Institute, codenamed, I love this name, SNIPE. So for today's text topic, let's send out really good vibes out into the universe for the successful launch of the Nuri rocket. And on that note, let's talk about this. What is your favorite inspirational quote? This is a good one. I got to think of my favorite too. So what's your favorite quote? What inspires you? It can be really short. It can be really philosophical. And sometimes the really short or maybe even funny ones are good too. So what is your favorite inspirational quote? Let us know. Send them into BEFM 부산 영어 방송 via pound 9050 샵 9050. That's going to cost you 100 won. You can also reach me for free through KakaoTalk, app, comment board, or Morning Wave and Busan homepage message board. You can go to befm.or.kr, click on Morning Wave and Busan to post your message there. And we are live streaming as we speak right now on YouTube, right? So type in BEFM or 부산 영어 방송. Click on the little red button. That's, the live button. And you'll see me chatting away. Plus, you'll see the chat room where lots of our listeners love to converge every morning and, chat amongst yourselves. So let's take a look ahead to our Wednesday morning. We have Tips and Haps, Haley with News 101, and then we have Facts of the Week with Leon. In hour number 2, we have Hot Clip, and then we have Busan Today, followed by our special interview. Today, we are going to focus on the wastewater, the nuclear wastewater that is due to be released from Fukushima in just several weeks now, actually, a couple of months' time. That's coming up this summer real soon. And, as you may know, the listeners out there, a team of inspectors from Korea are in Japan. So let's find out more about that whole big issue. We also have international news and Global Busan Focus. And a reminder that you can listen to our program not only on the Play Again feature on our homepage or on YouTube, but also on the podcast app called Patbang, and I'll be back with Life Goes On. This is Life Goes On, where we cover issues related to the workplace, school, home, and just about everything in between. You know, inflation is somewhat steadying after over a year of just really skyrocketing, as May's expected inflation is holding steady at 3.5%. That's according to the Bank of Korea yesterday, BOK. But with a rising cost of public utilities and food, the perceived cost of living is higher than ever. We've all tried to cut back on spending one way or another during this inflationary period. And here's another saving strategy that's been trending on social media: cash stuffing. Ever since this trend first came around on social media, it has garnered millions of views, and success stories are continuing. How cash stuffing works is essentially you set aside cash, yes, like real moolah, physical cash, for different budgeting categories at the beginning of each month. And the name comes from the practice of literally stuffing cash in different envelopes, and with categories including things like debt payment, bills, necessities, and even allowances for things, like for fun. A general rule of thumb is that 50% of your income goes to necessities, 30% to things that you don't need but want, and 20% to savings. General rule of thumb. And you can adjust the method or, the way you save the percentage to your convenience, like still using automatic withdrawals for bills and other necessities, but using cash for your optional spending. The logic of cash stuffing is that this method gives you a physical visual and a reminder of just how much you're spending or how much money you have left in your budget. And this is different from using credit cards or check cards, where your spending seems more abstract. Because, you hand over the card, it becomes harder to keep track of your expenses. And of course, this method isn't without its downsides, including the inconvenience of carrying cash around all the time and potentially losing out on things like interest rates. But experts say that it could be helpful to try it just for a few months to give yourself a visual reminder of how much money you're actually spending, especially for young people who might not have a sense of finances not quite yet. Listeners out there, let me ask you an additional question. Do you have any tips for cutting back on spending? If you do, let us know. And this is how life goes on. We're ready for our first song break. Here it is, The Great Escape by Boys Like Girls.
Plastic hearts, all our belongings in shopping carts. Goodbye, but we got one more night. Let's get drunk and ride around and make peace with an empty town. We can make it right. Throw it away, forget yesterday. We'll make the great escape. We won't hear a word they say. They don't know us anyway. Watch it burn, let it die, 'cause we are finally free tonight. It's so good to be by your side. We'll cry, we won't give up the fight. We'll scream loud at the top of our lungs, and they'll think it's just 'cause we're young, and we'll feel so alive. Throw it away, forget yesterday. We'll make the great escape. We won't hear a word they say. They don't know us anyway. Watch it burn, let it die, 'cause we are finally free. After the wasted time, the hours that were left behind, the answers that we'll never find. They don't mean a thing Forget yesterday. We'll make the great escape. We won't hear a word they say. They don't know us anyway. Throw it away. Forget yesterday. We'll make the great escape. We won't hear a word they say. They don't know us anyway. Throw it away. Forget yesterday. We'll make the great escape. We won't hear a word they say. They don't know us anyway. Watch it burn, let it die, 'cause we are finally free tonight.
It is time for Tips and Haps. We have Annie in the studio. How are you? I hope you're feeling better.
I am day by day getting better.
That's definitely good
Clearing up.
news. Hey, so for today's text topic, of course, we're taking messages about, cheering on, hoping for the successful launch of the Nuri rocket. Aside from that, though, we're asking about inspirational quotes. Do you have one? Or if not, maybe you can help me read one of the ones in Korean from one of our listeners.
Well, I was also thinking about like space.
Uh-huh.
I'm not a huge inspirational quote person, but I do always remember, was it Reach for the Stars? Reach for the moon and
Reach
land
for the
among
moon.
stars.
Yeah, that's a good one, definitely.
It's the theme.
Yeah, so maybe you can read one of our listeners'
Yeah.
inspirational quotes.
We actually got one from 재봉리 민. He said,
What did he say?
가장 중요한 때는 지금이며 가장 필요한 사람은 함께하는 사람이고 가장 중요한 일은 함께 있는 이에게 선을 행하는 것. And he said this is a Tolstoy quote. I actually kind of looked it up, so I
Okay.
didn't butcher it. Tolstoy said, remember that there's only one important time, and it is now. The present moment is the only time over which we have dominion. The most important person is always the person with whom you are. And then the most important pursuit is making that person, the one standing at your side, happy.
You guys are so deep this morning.
Yeah.
I was thinking of really short ones, just do it. Really short ones. Okay, I'll think deeper. I'll try. All right, let's get into tips and haps. First item. This is all about beach season. I gotta watch the pronunciation. Beach season. It is coming up, and Busan City is starting to prep for the summer.
Yeah, it's coming up fast.
Yes.
So Busan City held a 2023 beach management presentation yesterday at City Hall. This is the first summer since all social distancing restrictions have been lifted, and so Busan City is expecting a higher than usual volume of visitors.
Yes.
And the city held the briefing yesterday to make sure that all the necessary districts and counties, beach management officials are prepared for this influx and rush. So the officials yesterday discussed various safety measures, including traffic, as well as facilities like showers and bathrooms, as well as the hospitality industry.
Very important. And the city is also preparing some unique events, I hear.
Yeah, that's right. So Busan City is preparing a variety of beachside programs this summer. Taking the recommendation from the Oceans and Fisheries Ministry, Busan is seeking to operate its beaches under specific themes. So there'll be multiple oceanside healing programs. There's a spacing out competition, or 멍 때리기, over at Haeundae, as well as, you got the steady favorites like the fountain show over at Dadepo and the drone show at Gwangalli. And then this year, Haeundae and Songjang beaches will partially open on June 1st, and then the rest of the beaches officially open on July 1st up until August 31st.
That's right. So the soft opening, that's coming up real soon in a few days, right? Yes. So hope to see you at some of the beaches here in Busan. All right, next up, Busan City is holding a focused month-long crackdown against car and motorcycle violations. So tell us about this one.
Right. So Busan City announced that it is going to crack down against illegal vehicles as well as motorcycles. And the city will work with the police, the Road and Traffic Safety Corporation, and vehicle maintenance experts to ensure road safety. So the authorities will crack down on illegally registered cars or vehicles left unattended in residential areas for prolonged amounts of time, cars that have done illegal modifications, as well as vehicles in violation of the necessary laws on safety and license and registration.
Sure.
So owners of such vehicles will be ordered to take the necessary corrective measures, and if not, will be fined accordingly. And the crackdown will last for a month up until June 22nd.
All right, so be aware. All right, next up, I hear we have a concert that's coming up in Dongnae. Is it this Friday?
Yes, very soon actually. So
Yes.
Busan Museum announced that it is holding a Busan-esque band concert in front of its Dongnae branch this Friday. This is a part of the ongoing monthly Culture Day performances, and this is the first in a series where the museum highlights local bands. So this week's band is Ruch Ridim. I hope I said that right, which started getting quite a lot of attention with their 2019 album Yeongnam Vibe. So it has this unique sound melding gugak and electronic music. So they call their music gugak trance. And it works. The performance is open to the public. It's for free without pre-registration. The performance will begin at 5 p.m., but seating does open at 4:30, and masks are recommended.
Yes, because we're expecting a crowd, right? All right, let's get our traffic and weather for right now.
Right, so it is slow moving on Pyeongno from Wondong Interchange to Suyeong Tunnel, and that's both ways. And also on Mandok-daero from Mandok Intersection to the Expressway entrance intersection. And there is a bit of congestion on Nakdong-namno from Hadan Intersection to Hagwon Bridge, also from Mandok Intersection to Namhae Expressway, heading toward Deokjeon Interchange. And in terms of the weather, temperatures are currently averaging at 16 degrees Celsius. So that's 1 degree up from the same time yesterday.
Sure.
And highs will be reaching 23 degrees Celsius today. So the weather is looking a bit overcast throughout the day, a bit cloudy, but the air quality is definitely better. I just recommend maybe keeping warm with layers this morning.
Thank you, Annie. And of course, she's going to help you with our text topic in just a little bit. So let's get back to our main topic at hand. Today, it's all about the nudie because the launch of South Korea's homegrown rocket, it is set for 6:24 p.m. tonight. This is Nudie's third launch, a fully practical one with 8 satellites to boot. This is the first time that the rocket will be tasked with separating multiple satellites on one flight. So this process has been, in the works for over a decade when the Nudie project began in full back in 2010 to construct a rocket fully using South Korean technology on its own soil. The very first test launch was a near success. Do you remember in 2021 with Nudie flying to its target altitude, but stopping short of putting a dummy satellite into orbit? I remember that one. That was so exciting and then slightly disappointing because, just at the very end, didn't quite get there. The second launch last June was a complete success, which tested Nudie's ability to carry over a ton of cargo into orbit. So that's good news. And then the launch tonight, this will be like I said, a fully practical one to put South Korea's next generation, satellite technology into orbit. And so with Nuri, South Korea became the 7th country in the world to develop a space launch vehicle that can carry a 1-ton satellite. And the government plans on conducting 3 additional Nuri launches by 2027. That's our main theme for today. And it's so inspiring think about all the people, all the smart people, the intellects, all the people who worked on this project, countless, right? So inspirational. And hence, we're asking you for your favorite inspirational quote. Before I hand it over to Annie, I'm going to share one with you. It's really short. I never dreamed of success. I worked for it. Guess who said that? Estee Lauder. Who is she? Well, she was this, you might know her. It's a makeup brand. It's quite popular all around the world, Estee Lauder. Yes, so she said that. I never dreamed about success. I worked for it. She worked her buns off. So I'm going to hand it over to Annie for the Korean version.
Alright. 오늘의 토픽은 누리호의 성공적인 발사를 기원하며 여러분이 좋아하시는 명언을 보내주시면 되고요. 샵 9050 카카오톡 부산영어방송 또는 너튜브 라이브로 많이 보내주세요.
Yes, and by the way, if you feel like, oh, it's so difficult in English, send it in Korean too. It's okay. We'll translate it for you. All right, thank you so much, Annie, and I'll be back in just a moment.
Transforming our world. Navigating toward a better future. The great transformation begins right here in Busan through the 2030 Busan World Expo. Busan will set a new course toward a better tomorrow for the Earth and for humanity. So we need your support to start a new movement.
I support.
지지합니다.
I support. I support.
지지합니다.
I support.
Busan, the city where you can experience nature, technology, and people. The one and only 2030 Busan World Expo awaits you.
See you right here in Busan.
See you right here in Busan. This campaign is brought to you by BEFM, Busan 영어방송.
News.
This terrifying sound echoes through the chamber.
Political debates.
Some of the deductions.
Governor, I got it. Actually, I need to have you both hang up.
Experts from a variety of fields.
It's challenging. Patients cannot see our faces, and especially...
Hear all of these right here on Morning Wave in Busan with Catherine.
It is time for News 101. We have Haley here. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes. So it's hump day. We're looking forward to the duty and all that. But I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you have a favorite inspirational quote? Did you bring it with you?
I did because it's 7 whatever a.m.
Yes,
and
I know.
My brain doesn't work that way. This is from Nelson Mandela.
Yeah. Oh, you guys are getting deep.
We're getting deep.
Okay.
So the greatest glory in living lies not in never failing, but in rising every time we fail.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's a very deep one.
It's too deep for Wednesday. All right, let's get into our first story. We need some updates regarding Typhoon Mawar. Is that how you say it?
Yes, so Mawaru is how I've seen it in the Korean outlets, Mawar. So as of 3 a.m. this morning, Typhoon Mawar was about 130 kilometers southeast of Guam, and it's headed in the direction of Taiwan and the Philippines. So this is now categorized as a very strong typhoon, a super typhoon, with wind speeds of 50 meters per second, which is similar to Typhoon Hinnan nor from last year. So remember how strong that was.
Yes.
And typhoon warnings have been issued by the U.S. National Weather Service for Guam and airlines, and keep in mind in South Korea as well. They're also canceling their flights to Guam today.
So that's how it may affect our listeners here in Korea. And of course, we have listeners all over, so please be careful out there. Thanks for the update. We're going to move on to the economy. Inflation seems to be easing up. However, consumers, do they feel better about the economy?
They seem to be.
Okay.
So the Composite Consumer Sentiment Index, the CCSI in Korea, it's called 소비자심리지수. It recorded its highest levels in a year. So basically, in the span of the past year, we feel the most better about the state of the economy. So yesterday, the Bank of Korea report on consumer trends for May showed that the Composite Consumer Sentiment Index came to 98, which is up by 2.9 points compared to last month and highest since May of last year.
Sure.
So the CCSI is computed as a sum of 6 variables, and that includes the current living standards, a prospective household income, and prospective spending. So 98, that might seem high, but actually this is not out of 100. So 100 is the middle, I guess you could say. So a CCSI above 100 indicates improving outlook on the economy, and below 100 is a deteriorating, meaning people think the economy is going to get worse.
Yes.
So 98, almost there, but people still think the economy isn't improving, but we're getting there.
Yes.
So this figure of 98 shows that there are, yes, more negative outlooks about economic prospects, but it is getting more optimistic. So compared to last November, when South Korea's CCSI was at its lowest, that was at 86.7, and it has been rebounding ever since.
Well, that's definitely better news. What aspects of the economy led to this growth in sentiment?
Right. So consumers rank their current living conditions and future prospects more highly, more positively compared to the previous year. Also, their prospects on job opportunities grew by 4 points. Also, consumption and spending prospects came to 111, so far above 100, which shows that consumers think they will be spending more in the future.
I see. Well, definitely better news, right? If the people feel better about the economy, usually is doing better.
It does lead to a spike in demand, yes.
All right, let's turn to this story that we've been talking about for a while, this controversy surrounding the Nursing Act. The latest issue seems to be involving physician's assistants. Sometimes they're called practical nurses, right?
Right. So PAs, physician's assistants. So the president has, of course, vetoed the Nursing Act.
Yes.
And nurses have launched a protest, not a strike, but collective action, claiming that they won't be conducting any medical acts outside of their specific legal job description. And that is leading to a labor shortage. And then the issue of PAs has become a hot button issue. So PAs are basically nurses in a gray area between nurses and doctors.
Right.
So PAs are nurses who do some of the doctor's work. So they're similar to nurse practitioners in the United States and other countries. So they do things like writing prescriptions, helping with surgical procedures, running blood work, and whatnot. However, the biggest difference, nurse practitioners are licensed. PAs are not. And it's in this weird, gray, illegal, but still done area under South Korean law.
Okay.
However, this is a very much long-established practice, and medical authorities kind of have turned a blind eye in terms of the practical challenges.
Right. In Korean, is it 간호조무사? Is that
No, actually, it's not. 간호조무사 is nursing aides.
Okay,
so
so
they're actually not licensed nurses. PAs are licensed nurses, but they're kind of more experienced nurses who kind of end up going into the doctor's work realm.
Okay. So we have better clarification now. Why is this happening in the first place?
Right. So, as we've been talking about with pediatrics and other sort of non-popular departments, there are very little to no residents, no doctors residents. So the system was created back in 2010 to fill these gaps. And ever since the Residents Act was enacted and that limited the residents' working hours to 80 hours per week, PAs have become an invaluable part of the medical staff.
I see.
So for example, say that you are in a department at a general hospital where there's only one resident and he or she happens to be in surgery and there's a patient who's about to be released who needs an update on their prescription. So you obviously cannot wait for the resident for hours for that resident to come out or the attending. So the PAs, the PA nurses wind up writing the prescription for them. So this kind of it came out of necessity. So experts say that general hospitals, university level hospitals have about 60 to 100 PAs and experienced nurses in their 5th or 6th year wind up kind of taking this job. And interestingly, the Residents Association is welcoming the nurses' refusal to do PA work because they too are also calling for a clarification of professional boundaries. And interestingly, residents have also had their complaints because practically in real situations, PAs are more experienced than 1st or 2nd year doctors' residents. So they therefore are preferred in operational rooms. So younger residents don't get as much experience in ORs.
Oh, that explains a lot of the dynamics. So thank you for explaining that. All right, next up, the South Korean government inspection team is on site at the Fukushima nuclear power plant. Well, let's go over their itinerary, their agenda so far.
Right. So today is day 2 of the inspection at the Fukushima power plant. And on their first day in Japan, the inspection team met with the trade minister, economy minister, and officials from Tokyo Electric and Power Corporation. And they had a 4-hour meeting over technical matters.
Okay.
And then yesterday was day 1 at the actual plant. The inspection team looked over the ALPS, the ALP system, Advanced Liquid Processing, which removes the radioactive nuclides from the water. And this inspection took 9 hours. So in particular, they looked at the key equipment in the ALP system, like the absorption tower and the alert system in the operations control center for the wastewater release.
Okay.
And they also looked at the K4 tank, which is the tank where the nuclides are measured, as well as the J tanks. So after yesterday's schedule, the head of the inspection team, Yuguki, stated that they inspected all of the facilities that they had planned to do. And Yu, however, maintained a very careful position upon reporters' questions, and he sort of dodged questions that asked for his immediate opinion, saying that they will need a further inspection and inspection into the necessary documents that TEPCO will provide to give a concrete, conclusive answer.
I see.
And so once again, this will be day 2 of the physical inspection. So today, the team will inspect the chemical analysis wing that analyzes the nuclides and also look into the seawater dilution method.
Yes, of course, we're going to follow this story because we really want to know just how contaminated this water is.
Right.
That is going to be released, whether we like it or not. All right, lastly, we've been talking about this at Nudie Launch today for our main topic, but recently a SpaceX rocket took off to space carrying the first Arab female astronaut. Let's talk about this one.
So this is another milestone flight in the history of space exploration.
Yes.
So this past Sunday, the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket, it launched from the Kennedy Space Center at Cape Canaveral in the U.S. And this rocket included Ranaya Barnawi, who's a breast cancer researcher from Saudi Arabia. She's also the very first female Arab astronaut. Also carrying, also on the flight was the fighter pilot Ali Al-Qarni, who is also Saudi male. And these two are the first from Saudi Arabia to ride in a rocket ever since a Saudi prince traveled on board the Space Shuttle Discovery back in 1985. And also in an interesting coincidence, there's also an astronaut from the United Arab Emirates at the International Space Station right now. So it's kind of a sign of how diversifying space travel has become.
Right.
And this SpaceX flight also includes Peggy Whitson, who's a former NASA astronaut who will be making her fourth flight to the International Space Station, and also John Schaffner, a businessman from Tennessee who's serving as pilot. So this team is spending a week at the International Space Station and will return home via a splashdown off the coast of Florida.
Yes, well, thanks for covering this one as well as we look forward to the launch tonight. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, that everything goes according to plan.
6:24, yes.
Yes, all right, thank you. And we'll check in with you tomorrow. Thank you, Haley.
Have a great day.
All right. We're due for a short song break. Here it is. This is Starlight by Westlife.
Could it be the start of something? Maybe our luck's about to turn around a little. 'Cause right now we're caught in the middle. Could it be the start of hoping? Maybe now the doors are opening to a place that we've never been, seeing things that we've never seen. So many times I turned away, but something held me back that day. And all I wanna say is I hope you're here to stay. Starlight, lighting up the darkest night. Something I can see in your eyes keeps me alive tonight. Oh, we can all be starlights, racing at the speed of light. I found you in my darkest time. Now look how we shine so bright. Oh, maybe now this is our time for loving. You're the one who made me smile all over again and again. Now I'm singing, you saved me. This is a new beginning. So many times I turned away, but something held me back that day. And all I wanna say is I hope you're here to stay. Starlight, lighting up the darkest night. Something I can see in your eyes keeps me alive tonight. Oh, we can all be starlights, racing at the speed of light. I found you in my darkest time. Now look how we shine so bright. Oh, dancing at the speed of light. You know you are my starlight. Dancing at the speed of light. You know you are my starlight. I was in my darkest place, and then I saw your face. Lately all I wanna say is I hope you're here to stay. The darkest night, something I can see in your eyes keeps me alive tonight. Oh, we can all be starlights, racing at the speed of light. I found you in my darkest time. Now look how we shine so bright. Oh, we can all be starlights.
It is time for Leon and Facts of the Week. Good morning.
Good morning, Catherine.
I know, it's so exciting. It's Wednesday.
So warm today.
I know. It's such a beautiful day for the launch of the Nuri rocket. And that's coming on later on. But let's get into some facts that you're going to check for us. So let's get to it.
So I'm sure you know this very well. In Korean culture, there's what's called yakju, right? This is just like having a drink or two while having a meal to help digestion.
So they say.
Yes, so they say. Which is why
Mm-hmm.
instead of being called umju, it's called yakju. The yak meaning the medicine.
Oh,
and
really?
ju
That's
is the
what
drinking.
I never knew. That's why it was
like a
called
medicinal
that.
drinking thing. Yakju, right? So, Catherine, do you actually think that just one drink per day, one alcoholic drink, is pretty okay for your health?
I think we've all heard the like one glass of red wine might
good for
be
your
okay.
heart.
Yeah, heart health or something. I don't know if it's does it matter if it's like soju or if it's like whiskey?
Right.
I don't
Good
know.
question.
Because I'm not much of a drinker, so I don't know. I have no idea.
But I'm pretty sure a lot of people think one cup is okay.
Yeah, like
Can be
one
even
little
good for your
glass is
mental
not gonna hurt me. Or
Right,
it's
right.
okay. Or they tell themselves.
Right. So
Yes.
Korea is very widely known to have this tolerant drinking culture.
Very.
And the National Cancer Center announced the result of a national awareness survey on drinking and smoking this past month. And nearly 47% of those surveys said that a drink or two hardly has any effect on the health, while 18% said 1 or 2 cups of alcohol is actually good for your health. Only 34% of the respondents said that 1 or 2 cups of alcohol can be harmful to your health.
Okay.
So while a lot of people seem to think it's okay to have a drink or two, the National Cancer Center claims otherwise. They say that to prevent cancer, not even a glass is allowed per day. So
Yes.
let's fact check this today. Drinking a cup or a glass or two per day of alcohol has no effect on health.
Yeah, and even the
A lot
whole
of
thing,
people
is it a
wanna believe
cup? Is it a glass? Let's just call it
Yeah.
serving because, for
Right.
each
Ah,
one,
it's
it's
so
like,
confusing.
for
Is it a cup of
whiskey,
beer? No, is it a
it's a glass of beer, right?
right.
And then even, or a pint of beer. But even for let's say whiskey, I don't think we would drink the entire glass. It's like a shot glass, right?
So one
Serving.
serving.
We'll go with serving. Okay.
Okay.
So, it's kind of this conventional thought like we've been talking about in our culture that, drinking is serving, glass, shot, whatever you want to call it. I hope you're not drinking a mug of soju every day. But does that come from history? Is it
Yes.
rooted in our history?
It actually is, surprisingly. So when taking a look at an article that dates all the way back to 1927 in 동아일보, it said that the habit of drinking has been encouraged since the Joseon dynasty, as alcohol has been always served on the memorial service table of our ancestors. So naturally, the culture of drinking has been carried down to today. In another article called The Culture and Science of Alcohol in 1962, the 조선일보 explained that proper drinking temporarily supplies heat and energy, paralyzes the central nervous system, relieves all anxiety and pain, and sometimes improve mental efficiency and helps work.
My favorite part was paralyzing the central. Do you want to paralyze your central nervous?
Don't you? I need to. I was like, I'm so yemin. I'm so sensitive right now. I just need to paralyze
I need
myself.
to just freeze it right there.
Yeah, this is medicine. That's my mentality.
That's so funny.
Right. And actually, there have been some studies that show also that moderate or small amounts of alcohol are beneficial to your health. And the liquor industry made use of this to, of course, market their drinks.
Of course.
So, given our history of having a degree of tolerance to alcohol and these short studies that, that say that moderate drinking is good for your health, highlighted especially by the alcohol industry, these kind of things led to a rise in perception that 1 or 2 servings of alcohol can be good for your health.
Ew. So let's get to the fact check. Is it okay to have maybe 1 serving of alcohol, whatever it may be, per day?
Well, let's see what the says.
Okay.
It explains that alcohol has been classified as a group 1 carcinogen by the International Agency for Cancer back in 1988. This means that the incidence of malignant tumors in the oral, pharynx, larynx, esophagus, and liver is caused related to the intake of alcoholic beverages.
So that means basically all the way from your mouth down, throat, all the way down to your liver. Yes,
Right.
that's
That's what that means. So complicated, right?
Thank you for that. And in January, the WHO published a paper called Health and Cancer Risk Related to Low Alcohol Consumption. In this paper, the WHO emphasized that there is no safe amount that does not affect health when it comes to alcohol consumption. No matter how little you drink, it will have a bad effect on your health. According to the latest data, half of all alcohol-induced cancers in Europe were caused by light to normal alcohol consumption. The amount of alcohol in this classification is less than 20 grams. That would include a small can or beer bottle, approximately 300 milliliters, 10 milliliters of wine, or just one glass of distilled liquid, which includes whiskey.
Includes
so
whiskey. So the WHO is basically saying that any level of drinking is not really good for your health.
Right.
Oh, no. So why then do we often see these various studies out there that say, oh, moderate drinking, maybe that, glass of red wine is okay for you or good for you sometimes even.
Right.
In the media, I mean, are these like, is this fake news, false rumors? What is it?
Right. Good question. So the WHO have made point that several studies did show that alcohol consumption may lower the risk of some cardiovascular disease or even type 2 diabetes.
Okay.
However, the WHO said that this is also limited to elderly and added that when light alcohol consumption is combined with intermittent binge drinking, it takes away the positive effect and actually increase the risk of cardiovascular diseases.
We got to repeat that. The intermittent binge drinking.
So binge drinking is the worst.
That's what a lot of us do in Korea. I mean, it's
Can we
true,
say
right?
intermittent or
the binge drinking, like 끝까지, like 1차, 2차,
right.
3차.
That's what's considered drinking in
That's
Korea.
binge drinking.
Right.
Mm.
Right, and as there are no studies showing that the potential presence of protective effects against cardiovascular disease or type 2 diabetes reduces the risk of cancer for individual consumers, not the elderly. And according to the WHO, there is, again, no safe level of alcohol consumption for your health.
Sorry, listeners, to be a Debbie Downer on this Wednesday. So basically, can we say that the statement that the 1 or 2 servings of alcohol is good for you is basically just not true?
It is just not true, unfortunately. So for our listeners, I brought some information about drinking guidelines.
Okay, here we go.
According to the U.S. Department of Health, eating guidelines for Americans 2020 to 2025, adults of legal drinking age are recommended not to drink at all. But when
not at all.
drinking, for men, they recommend less than 2 servings.
Okay.
For women, less than 1 serving.
Less than
not
1?
fair.
Like half a soju shot, really? Whoa.
And also, they talked about what's considered binge drinking.
Please listen.
Please listen.
Binge
I think a lot of people
don't think they're binge drinking, right?
Oh,
You might
shoot,
be.
I was binge drinking.
Right,
all
okay.
this
Here's
time.
the definition.
Right, so drinking more than 5, this is how it was stated in the study. So if drinking more than 5 cups or more than 4 cups for women for 2 hours.
For 2 hours.
For 2 hours. So 5 cups within 2 hours is defined as binge drinking.
Okay, so 5 soju shots in 2 hours is considered binge
Everyone
drinking.
does that. Not a lot of people that I know.
Everybody.
Not everyone.
Collective. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right.
All right. Like who doesn't? But
right.
Or drinking more than 4 cups a day or 3 cups for women is defined as excessive alcohol use.
Really?
Yes. So I mean, we're talking about the U.S. Department of Health right now, so
I know, but
a little straight.
The U.S. usually goes by the
working culture. You need to understand. We need alcohol.
The U.S. goes by usually the world standards.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry to all the listeners. Did I just ruin your Wednesday? No 해식 for you today. Yes. All right. Well, thanks for this, but we got to move on to our next fact. Let's check it out.
So these days when you go to some restaurants, especially the hip and trendy ones, you can often find out that the name of those restaurants that are written on the signboard, outdoor signboards, are oftentimes all in English or even in a
In French.
Yes, all in foreign language. But
Yes.
like, how do you read that?
I know.
So recently, many people on various SNS have posted photos of these popular and hip restaurants that have outdoor signboards written in all English or French, citing inconvenience. Have you seen? I'm sure you have.
Recently,
There's
I
so
just
many.
went to one a couple weeks back for my birthday. My family made a reservation for me at this so-called, French restaurant, and then I think was it French or Italian? But anyways, it was like I won't say the name because I don't want to advertise. It was Madame Beaucoup,
Wow.
right? And it was like some
And
fancy
you
name.
were having a hard time pronouncing it.
And I was like, because I'm so bad with French, right?
Uh-huh.
Spanish and English, I'm okay, but I was just like, what the? Right? So I went, and then my daughters had made the reservation, but
Right,
I
right.
didn't want to appear like I didn't know. So I was like, oh, let's take a little selfie with the little the name, and then I was looking it up, like, well, how do you pronounce this, right? Because it was there
Even
was
if
no
you could
Korean in
read
it.
it, was it in English or
It was in French.
And it was in
French. It was it was in French.
And it wasn't. It didn't have a Korean.
No,
of course.
not on the
Because
signage.
That's not trendy, right?
Yeah, that's not
these days.
trendy. Is that what we're talking about?
That is what we're talking
okay.
about. So there was this another post on SNS that said,
Yes.
it is illegal. This person was claiming it is illegal to display a store's outdoor signboard only in foreign language such as English or
Really?
French. Right, that's just what this person was claiming.
Okay.
And that post received more than 1 million views.
Okay, so we're running out of time, so we gotta
All right.
condense it.
Okay,
Is it
let
illegal?
me just get to the point. So, is it illegal to display a store signboard all in a foreign language? It is.
It is.
But the interesting thing is that to be illegal, the store has to meet these several requirements.
Like?
It has to be located above 4th floor or above, or the signboard needs to be at least size 5 meters squared. But a lot of these restaurants, right?
They get around it.
They're on the
ground
first
level.
floor, right?
Yeah, this
so
one was
they
on ground
don't
level.
fall under this law, this so-called Enforcement Decree of Outdoor Advertisements Act.
I didn't
So
know
it is
that.
illegal, but they can easily get out of it.
They can get around. They
So-
work around it, and plus, no one enforces. Who is
that's
enforcing?
the more important. Who's gonna? But we're talking about really trendy and hip restaurants. Who's gonna call?
I have the
be like,
best
"This is
story for
illegal."
you.
What is the
True
best
story. My son, when he was really young, he only could read English and he doesn't know French. And then I said, "Meet me." I said, "Where are you? I'll pick you up." And he said, "Mommy, I'm in front of a store and it's Tao's." Don't say the name of it because we can't say brand.
Okay.
He said, "I'm in front of
I
Tao's
know.
Les Jowers." I'll just leave it at that. We're gonna check in with you next week in our new season, right?
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah, you'll be back.
still
Thank
be here.
you, Leon.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.
All right. I'll just leave it at that. I'll let the rest of you try to figure that one out. Real quick, I'm just gonna read one quote from Pae Hung-won-nim. They say their favorite inspirational quote: "Be thankful for what you have and always be humble." Oh, that's a good one to take us out for the first hour. I will read more of your messages in hour number 2. So here it is. This is Strawberry Moon by IU. I'll be back at 8.
달이 익어가니 서둘러 젊은 피야 매일들의 한 송이 들고 사랑이 어지러이 떠다니는 밤이야 나라가 사뿐히 이루려 어려운 행운이야 마음의 심장이 뛰어 오히려 기꺼이 헤매고픈 밤이야 너와 길 잃을 수 있다면 막 잡은 설화산으로 출입구를 한번 이 무한함의 끝과 끝 더위 아래로 비행을 떠날 거야 푸르른 우리 위로 커다란 스트로베리만한 스쿱 나에게 너를 맡겨볼래
지그재그로 움직인대.
누가?
척추라인에 맞춰서 움직인대.
누가?
누구긴 누가 엔모션 프로지. 척추를 지그재그로 틀어 꾹꾹 눌러주는 움직임. 누가의 시그니처 모션. 누가 베스트 엔모션 프로. 가까운 누가페에서 만나요. 의료기기 광고입니다.
부산을 한 장의 사진에 담는다면 어디로 가야 할까요? 꼬꼬마 시절 이때만큼은 세상을 내려다보며 꿈을 키웠고 용돈을 모아 산 사진기는 아직도 서랍 속에 있습니다. 시간이 흘러 키는 자라고 사진은 어디서든 찍을 수 있는 세상이 되었지만 부산의 진짜 모습을 보기 위해서는 같이 가볼 곳이 있습니다. 광복동에서 부산을 내려다보며 우리와 함께 해온 그곳. 새롭게 불을 밝힌 다이아몬드 타워와 함께 용두산 공원이 우리를 다시 찾아왔습니다. 북한과 남항, 멀리 남구와 해운대까지 부산을 한눈에 담을 수 있는 그곳. 알록달록 꽃시계와 함께 다시 시민의 품으로 돌아온 용두산 공원은 부산의 또 하나의 명소입니다. 이 캠페인은 대선공익재단과 BFM 부산영어방송이 함께합니다.
9년 전 한국에서의 새로운 출발을 위해 부산을 처음 찾은 프랭크. 부산의 자연과 사람, 부산에서 누리는 모든 것을 사랑하는 그는 부산의 변함없는 한대에 늘 감탄합니다.
I think that Busan people are actually very, very kind and very welcoming. If I seemed a little lost, there was always someone that was there to ask me if I needed help. They're more seriously friendly than it's very serious. I very seriously want to help you.
부산의 한결같은 모습도 늘 감동을 주지만 이제는 부산의 미래를 꿈꾸며 2030년 부산의 새로운 도약을 기대합니다.
Busan people are very proud of their city. They want to share the city with everyone. If we get the World Expo, it'll really put Busan on a global map.
세계 박람회가 어울리는 도시, 미래를 향한 힘찬 도약. 부산에서 출발한 파도는 이미 세계를 향해 뻗어나가고 있습니다. 2030 부산 세계 박람회. 부산이 시작하고 대한민국이 함께 이뤄갑니다. 이 캠페인은 지역과 함께하는 든든한 동반자 BNK 부산은행과 함께합니다.
저희 중소기업은 광고비가 제일 부담되죠.
코바코에서 TV 라디오 광고비 지원받으세요.
혁신형 중소기업 방송광고 지원 제도로 광고비 70% 할인이나 250% 보너스 광고 지원.
코바코로 문의하세요. 051-751-0400.
BFM is recruiting new members for Listeners Advisory Council. The members of BFM Listeners Advisory Council provide valuable opinion to improve our programs and to enhance the listeners' rights. We're looking for members to give us their insight into BFM programs, run listener participation programs, and work with us to develop and improve our broadcast. For more details, visit bfm.or.kr.
The time is now 8 o'clock.
And now, Begin your day with Morning Wave in Busan.
Good morning.
Tired of searching for a great morning show? If you're listening to this, you're tuned into the right frequency. Don't touch that dial. Stay tuned to Morning Wave.
Morning Wave. Begin your day with Morning Wave in Busan with Catherine.
For today's hot clip, I want to cover a story that may affect you, especially if you're of a certain age. Today's story is all about the candy called Skittles. There is a new bill in the California legislature that is aiming to change the ingredient makeup of some of America's most popular snacks and candies and other foods sold in stores. So broadly, this is called the Skittles ban. Let's listen to the clip from MASH and Fox News.
It turns out that when you taste the rainbow by eating Skittles, you might just be tasting something else you probably didn't bargain for, too. Titanium dioxide is an additive found in the popular candy, not to mention many other foods like soups, sandwich spreads, and Starburst, says Everyday Health. Although it's still ever present in the United States, some other countries are far more skeptical of the ingredient, thanks to reports that the additive damages DNA over time. This can possibly give those who consume it a higher risk of cancer. In fact, the European Union announced in 2021 that titanium dioxide is not considered safe in food, even though dangerous effects have yet to be proven. Still, experts haven't been able to prove that it's entirely unsafe either. Per Everyday Health, it's likely that Skittles will eventually be banned. Sweden and Norway have already banned the confection, says Eat This, Not That. But those two countries are ahead of the pack for an entirely different reason. Despite the EU's concern, Skittles aren't banned in Sweden and Norway because of the titanium dioxide additive inside the candy. In fact, the countries are more concerned about allergic reactions and hyperactivity in children caused by the product's food coloring dyes. Elsewhere in the EU, if you get your hands on a packet of Skittles, they will probably taste a little different because they are colored naturally using spices, veggies, and fruits. Though the EU hasn't banned Yellow 5 and Yellow 6 dyes, it requires that any food containing the colorings must be packaged with a warning that reads, "May have an adverse effect on activity and attention in children."
Candy like Skittles and hot tamales may be a thing of a past here in California. That is if a new bill passes in the state Senate.
We are talking about Assembly Bill 418 that overwhelmingly passed the California State Assembly last week. Now, the bill would ban the manufacture, sale, and distribution of products that contain red dye number 3. And the list of products that contain that chemical are vast, including candy, medicine, pizza, drinks, flour, even coffee creamer. Now, the bill's author, Assemblyman Jesse Gabriel, says the chemicals have been linked to cancer, reproductive issues, and developmental issues in children. So if the bill passes and becomes law, it would force food and beverage companies to change its recipes and formulas so they can be sold in the state of California.
So as you heard in those two clips together, the colors that make the candy what it is, so colorful and pretty, apparently not too good for our health. And the thing is, I know many of you out there have probably had this candy or really enjoyed it, or maybe even had some recently. So these additives some of these are already banned in the EU, and California, just one state of the United States, is making the first move. Let me ask you this. Would you be willing to have this same type of candy with vegetable dyes or with different flavors, with vegetable flavors? I don't know. Would it be the same? I just don't know, because some of these candy, part of our childhood memories, but apparently maybe just not so good for our health. And this was our hot clip for today. South Korean experts began on-site inspection of Fukushima nuclear plant. A South Korean team of experts began a 2-day inspection of the planned release of radioactive water from the crippled Fukushima nuclear power plant yesterday, amid lingering concerns about the safety of the water. The 21-member team, headed by Nuclear Safety and Security Commission Chairperson Yoo Guk-hee, visited the plant from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. to assess whether the treated water is safe enough to be discharged into the sea. Tomorrow, they plan to visit a chemical study facility responsible for analyzing nuclides and examine the seawater dilution system and discharge facilities, he added. Parties expected to renegotiate nursing law vetoed by Yoon. Following a floor leadership meeting of the ruling People Power Party, or PPP, yesterday, floor leader Yoo Jae-ok said he had suggested to the main opposition Democratic Party, or DP, that the two sides seek an agreement on the revisions prior to another vote. DP floor leader Park Kwang-on, on his part, said he would review the proposal. With a 2/3 majority out of a quorum of sitting lawmakers required to override a presidential veto, however, the prospects seem slim as the PPP holds 114 out of 299 seats. Should the parties fail to narrow their differences, the DP is expected to put the current bill to another plenary vote tomorrow. South Korean space rocket positioned on launch pad on eve of liftoff. South Korea yesterday positioned its homegrown space rocket Nuri on the launch pad at the Naro Space Center a day ahead of its liftoff to send multiple satellites into orbit. Nuri, also known as KSLV-2, reached the launch pad at 7:20 a.m. and was erected at the launch pad at the Space Center in Kuhung. The process was wrapped up at 9:14 p.m., according to the Ministry of Science and ICT and the Korea Aerospace Research Institute, known as KARI. The Space Ministry and KARI held a launch management committee meeting to decide whether to proceed with today's scheduled launch. The liftoff, Nuri's third launch, is likely to take place at 6:24 p.m. tonight, but the time could change, the ministry said. Military seeks to require drug tests for new recruits. South Korea is considering requiring soon-to-be conscripts to take drug tests, the Defense Ministry said yesterday, in a stepped-up fight against illegal drugs. The ministry unveiled the move as a part of its anti-drug measures after the military saw a sharp rise in drug cases to 30 last year from 9 in 2020. The ministry is seeking to expand drug tests on those undergoing pre-enlistment physical exams, but it noted that testing would require a legal revision due to concerns of potential human rights violations. Currently, the prospective enlistees are to undergo a drug test during their physical exams only if a medical officer deems it necessary or if they disclose their past experience with drugs. Insurgents defeated after rare cross-border incursion, says Russia. Armed insurgents who crossed the border from Ukraine to launch attacks in Russia's Belgorod region have been defeated, Moscow claims. Villages near the border were evacuated after coming under shell fire in one of the most significant cross-border raids since the start of Russia's invasion. Russia says 70 attackers were killed and insists the fighters are Ukrainian, but Kyiv has denied involvement, and two Russian paramilitary groups have said they were behind the incursion. Monday's raid led Moscow to declare a counterterrorism operation, giving the authorities some special powers to clamp down on communications and people's movements. The measures were only lifted on Tuesday afternoon local time. Ron DeSantis to kick off 2024 presidential campaign. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis will share the virtual stage Wednesday night local time with Twitter owner Elon Musk when he kicks off his Republican presidential primary campaign, a spokesperson for the governor told the media. The decision to make the announcement on the site's audio platform in a discussion with Musk underscores DeSantis' desire to win the loyalty of right-wing influencers as part of a larger bid to overtake former President Donald Trump for the 2024 GOP nomination. DeSantis is widely perceived as Trump's most formidable primary challenger, but his standing has slipped following a series of unsure performances in the build-up to his campaign launch. Opting to make his debut as a presidential candidate on Twitter is also a clear finger in the former president's eye. Prince Harry loses legal bid to pay for police protection while in UK. Prince Harry has lost a legal challenge seeking the right to pay for his police protection while in the UK, London's High Court ruled on Tuesday local time in a series of lawsuits the Duke of Sussex is pursuing in the country. The Duke was challenging the decision to withdraw his police protection after he stepped down as a working royal. The judge, Justice Chamberlain, on Tuesday local time denied a legal bid by the Duke to review the decision not to allow him to pay for police protection out of his own funds. A separate legal effort to review the original decision to strip him of taxpayer-funded protection is ongoing. Police digging near reservoir in Madeleine McCann case. Police officers have started digging near a reservoir in Portugal in a long-running investigation into the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. The Arada Dam is 50 kilometers from where the British toddler went missing in Praia da Luz 16 years ago. The operation is being led by German police looking for evidence to link her disappearance to Christian Bruckner. The 45-year-old German national was made a formal suspect by Portuguese prosecutors in 2022. Speaking to the German regional public broadcaster, German state prosecutor Hans Christian Wolters told the authorities that they have grounds to believe that they could find evidence there in the reservoir. This was News Highlights. It's time for Busan Today. We have Annie back in the studio. So, Annie, tell us about this one. The Education Office and Busan Regional Police announced this comprehensive safety measures, these measures for school zones.
Right. So after the fatal accident in Yeongdo school zone, the topic of school zone safety for children has been the utmost priority for Busan City.
Right.
And the city council, Office of Education, the police, as well as the 16 districts and counties have formed a joint task force. So the officials with parents and experts, they inspected all 853 school zones in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of this survey, the officials deemed that they would need a 120 billion won budget for total upkeep as well as renovation. And for the most urgent projects, the city will put in 15 billion won of its available budget for immediate maintenance.
Well, what about for the long term?
Right. Well, future projects will be divided into 4 parts. That's infrastructure, a safe walkway, focused management of high-risk school zones, and cooperation and institutional reform. For instance, the authorities will install CCTVs on narrow roads, in school zones, and fences that would be strong enough to protect pedestrians from trucks that are traveling up to 80 kilometers per hour. And the city will also work work on putting up sidewalks on narrow roads that both pedestrians and cars use together. For roads that are too narrow to separate, the city will work with the police to change them into one-way streets to increase safety. And then lastly, the city will officially propose to the government to raise the fines for illegal parking in school zones to 5 times the current amount. Mayor Park Hyung-jun said that the city will allocate its resources to make sure that young lives are not sacrificed and that children's safety must be especially protected and managed within the social safety net.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for reporting on that. All right, next up, Busan City withdrew the previous MOU with Sotheby's to build an auction house with the Osiria Tourism Complex, correct?
Right. So Busan City announced that it has canceled the MOU it signed with Korea Sotheby International Realty. So according to the city, the gist of the agreement was for Korea Sotheby International Realty to establish its branch within the tourism complex and for the city to provide administrative support. However, the Realty Corporation withdrew its business plans on grounds of poor business value. And so Busan City therefore deemed that it was impossible for the parties to carry out the deal and officially canceled the MOU last week. So Busan City said that it has only pledged administrative support, so it will not see any financial losses, but said that it will make sure that such a case doesn't happen again in the future.
I see. All right, moving on. Busan City Council is looking to create the first ever reserved parking for veterans.
Right. As you know, June is Veterans and Patriots Month.
Right.
And in time for this month, Busan City Council is working on establishing designated parking spots for veterans as well as patriots. So the People Power Party council members Kim Hyo-jung and Park Dae-gun from the Bukgu district said that they will jointly introduce the necessary bill for this at the next city council session. And if this passes, Busan would be the first metropolitan city in the country to have such priority parking. And according to the bill, in parking lots with 30 or more spots, the city must designate one of them as priority parking for veterans, and in lots without such designated spots, the manager or the supervisor of the lot must guide veterans' vehicles to an appropriate spot.
I see. We'll see if this is a go, but thank you for covering all the local information today. And that takes us to our text topic today. It's all about inspiration and inspirational quotes, listeners. So let me ask you this. What is your favorite inspirational quote? That's our text topic. Annie?
네, 오늘 그 누리호의 성공적인 발사를 기원하며 여러분이 좋아하시는 명언을 보내주시면 됩니다.
Thank you for that. We'll check in with you tomorrow. Thank you.
Right, bye-bye.
All right. That was Annie, everybody. And before we get to our special interview, I'm going to just read one more message. We have Choi Hee-sung-nim who says, health is the greatest gift, contentment the greatest wealth, and faithfulness the best relationship. That's a good one. I'll be back in a moment.
Begin your day with Morning Wave in Busan. Begin your day with Catherine. Begin your day with Morning Wave in Busan.
It's time for a special interview, and today we are tackling a very hot issue here in Korea. It's regarding Japan's plan to release the nuclear contaminated water, the wastewater, into the Pacific Ocean. And there are serious concerns here in Korea as well as all around the world. And upon this agreement struck between President Yoon Suk-yeol and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, well, Korea's inspection team is actually currently on site in Japan for inspection. So what do we need to know, and what are the real dangers of this? Let's find out. We have invited Shaun Burnie, who is a nuclear specialist with Greenpeace East Asia. So he's going to join us live right now. Hi, thanks for joining us today.
Good morning.
Yes, yes. So it does seem that the G7 countries are very much unified or behind the IAEA or the International Atomic Energy Agency when it comes to the plans for the nuclear wastewater to be released from Fukushima. So that's their take. What are your thoughts on this plan?
Well, for many years, we've been concerned that Japan was moving towards the point that we're reaching today, which is within a matter of a few months, radioactive pollution will be deliberately begun by the Japanese government at the Fukushima Daiichi plant. In fact, at the G7, although the states welcomed the role of the IEA and said that they supported the legal approach, the German government, which is part of the G7, made it very clear that they were not in favor of the actual discharges. So we're deeply concerned. This is something that will go on probably the rest of this century, perhaps longer, because of the ongoing nuclear crisis at the Fukushima plant.
Right, right. And so, based on what we know so far, if you can give us some details on this plan, because we, the public, we have been hearing about this for, months, months ahead of time. However, we're not experts, and we're very much concerned about, how much water are we talking about? Is this a slow release? Is this all at once? What do you know?
So the water is currently stored in large steel tanks, over 1,000 of these tanks. In total, as of the end of April, there was 1.33 million cubic meters, so 1.3 million tons of this water. It's a mixture of groundwater that's entered the site and also water that's been used deliberately for cooling the three nuclear reactors that suffered the meltdown in 2011. Under the Japanese regulations, Tokyo Electric, the owner of the plant, will be permitted to discharge a fraction of that each year. That's under nuclear regulation, and that's a certain amount of radioactivity in the water. And the estimate is that that would be a maximum of what's called 22 terabecquerels. So that's the amount of radioactivity that will be allowed to be discharged each year, every year. And the problem is, they don't even know how much radioactivity is in the tanks because they've done limited testing of the tanks, and that the groundwater is continuing to be contaminated every day because there's new groundwater coming onto the site, which over the coming decades will amount to potentially hundreds of thousands of tons more. So this is a giant nuclear experiment on the environment of the Pacific, deliberately as a decision made by the Japanese government.
Yes, yes. And so in terms of some of the toxins we're talking about, cesium, tritium, to be honest, these terms to the lay people, we just don't know what they are. We've heard about them in the news and even with other experts. But if you can kind of give us another overview of just how toxic these things can be.
Well, nuclear plants, through the very nature of what they are, they operate with nuclear fuel. And as the reaction goes on inside a nuclear reactor, different radioactive materials, different products are produced. One category is called fission products. So that's the radioactive fission creates new radioactive materials. In the case of Fukushima, 3 nuclear reactors, the nuclear fuel rapidly melted down. In the case of reactor number 1, within a matter of hours, the nuclear fuel was melting down, at which point that radioactivity, all the different types of radioactive materials, came directly into contact with water. And that is now what's in these tanks. The radioactive material that normally would be inside solid nuclear fuel has basically dispersed a certain amount, and it's still only a small fragment of what's actually in the nuclear reactors, because most of the nuclear material is still there in a solid form in the bottom of each of those 3 reactors. But those nuclear materials, as you mentioned, cesium or tritium or carbon or plutonium, they've all come into contact with water and are basically mixed into this tank water. And Tokyo Electric has applied certain technology. You often hear the term ALPS,
Yes.
which stands for Advanced Liquid Processing System. It's a chemical processing technology designed to try and remove that radioactive material, not carbon-14, not tritium, but all of the other hazardous radionuclides like plutonium and cesium. Each of those radioactive materials has different properties, different chemical properties. And when you discharge it into the marine environment, they behave differently. They concentrate or bioaccumulate at different rates. In marine life, in seaweed, in plants, in marine life generally, and ultimately, because it has the potential to bioaccumulate and even biomagnify, so it gets even higher concentrations, that's particularly where the concerns come into in terms of human concentration. But this is a general threat to the marine environment.
Yes, yes. And the South Korean inspection team is in Japan right now as we speak for what's to be supposedly several days of testing, checking out the facilities and whatnot. From your point of view as an expert, what are some of the essential tests that the team should be conducting to further allay some of the many concerns that people have? Because the IAEA, that agency says one thing, but people are still very much concerned.
Unfortunately, I think the visit to Fukushima is more of a photo opportunity. If they really was an interest to understand what's going on at Fukushima, you would have to spend as long as the current operators, Tokyo Electric, are spending at the plant, which is years and years of conducting investigations, because this is a unique, complex problem. And I'm afraid a few days of visiting Fukushima, they're not going to be able to undertake any serious investigation, any serious science. It's not, unfortunately, a serious process. Unfortunately, what will happen, I'm almost certainly, is they'll come back and that they've been assured that these discharge plans are going to be safe. Well, they can't make that assurance. I would point to, for example, the United States National Association of Marine Laboratories, which is the most prestigious group of oceanographic institutions, specialist scientific institutions that study oceanography. They came out with a very strong statement in December 2022, basically saying the science is not there. They have not demonstrated that there will not be a serious impact to the marine environment, and called for storage of the water and alternatives to discharge. So I'm afraid a few days in Fukushima, I hope they have really good food and they meet some really nice people, but really we're not going to learn anything.
Ultimately, it does seem that the decision has been made for this water to be released. Is it ultimately a matter of money? You mentioned, and many other experts have mentioned, storage as another solution. Is it because it is just too costly, and whether it's TEPCO or whether it's the Japanese government, they just don't want to pay for it?
Unfortunately, that is one of the main reasons. There is storage space. The Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant is in an area, unfortunately, now heavily contaminated with radioactivity, including in the areas outside the plant. Two districts, Okuma and Futaba, are host to a nuclear waste storage facility that will have about 14 to 16 million tons of nuclear waste. So unfortunately, there is storage space in the area, but they don't want to go that path. One reason is cost. It's a lot more expensive to store than discharge. But actually, there's a political reason, which is that the Japanese government wants to signal to the people of Japan and the wider international community that they're moving forward with decommissioning, that they can solve these problems from a triple reactor meltdown. Unfortunately, you could invite me on this program in another 30 years, or actually, if I was able to, in 100 years, and we'd still be talking about the problems at Fukushima Daiichi, because there is no current plan that's going to solve all these problems. This radiological threat to the Pacific, to the Asia-Pacific region, is basically got no end.
Well, that on that thought, unfortunately, we're going to have to call it a wrap for today's interview. But thank you so much for coming on air with us and sharing your expert opinion and views with our listeners. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This was our special interview with Shaun Burnie, a senior nuclear specialist with Greenpeace East Asia. So once again, the team, it's in Japan. The members are going to be conducting their tests. We'll see what they come back with. In the meantime, for now, I'm going to let you think about what we just talked about. You do the thinking and you come to your own conclusions, because it's not my duty to, force my opinion on you. It is now 8:31. Here is your traffic update. It is slow moving on Mangyangno from Seodaesin intersection to Gudok Stadium. Also on Gayadero from Naengjeong-hill to Jure intersection. Congested on the Dongso overpass from Gamjeon interchange to the old Gaegeum tollgate. Also on Chungnyeol-daero from Minam intersection to Naesung intersection. It is currently 19 and it's going to go up to 23. We are expecting it to be overcast pretty much throughout the day. And I'll be back in just a moment. But before that, let's read some of your messages, because, oh my goodness, it is... The chat board is lighting up with all of your inspirational quotes. Today's text topic is all about your most inspirational quote. What inspires you? All right, Taejin Club님 saying, I'm going to paraphrase in English. Simple, but not shabby. Splendid, but not extravagant. That's a good one. What about 4222님? When you think it's too late, it's the perfect time. That gets you thinking too, right? And some of you are just so deep with these quotes, okay? I also see comments regarding people are really worried about, that particular brand of candy, right? They're trying to, make it healthier. So don't worry. I don't think they're going to go away anytime soon. JB Neem saying, I like stay hungry, stay foolish. Ooh, that's a nice, short but sweet quote. Yes, yes. And so here's our next song. This is Beautiful People by Ed Sheeran featuring Khalid.
On a Saturday night in the summer, sundown and they all come out. Lamborghinis and they rented Hummers. The party's on, so they're heading downtown. Everybody's looking for a come up, and they wanna know what you're about. Me in the middle with the one I love, we're just trying to figure everything out. We don't fit in well, 'cause we are just ourselves. I could use some help getting out of this conversation. Yeah, you look stunning, dear, so don't ask that question here. This is my only fear, that we become beautiful people. Top designer clothes, front row fashion shows. What you do and who'd you know? Inside the world of beautiful people. Champagne and rolled up nose, prenups and broken homes. Surrounded but still alone. Let's leave the party. That's not who we are. We are not beautiful. Yeah, that's not who we are. We are not beautiful. Drove for hours last night and we made it nowhere. Now I see stars in your eyes when we're halfway there. Now I'm not fazed by all the lights and flashy cameras, 'cause with my arms around you, there's no need to care. We don't fit in well. We are just ourselves. I could use some help getting out of this conversation here. Your looks done in this. Don't ask that question here. This is my only fear, that we become beautiful people. Top designer clothes, front row at fashion shows. What you do and who'd you know? Inside the world of beautiful people. Champagne and rolled up nose, prenups and broken homes. Surrounded but still alone. Let's leave the party. That's not who we are. We are not beautiful. Yeah, that's not who we are. We are not beautiful. We are not beautiful.
It's time for international news. We have Haeyeon in the studio. Hello.
Good morning.
You look so lovely today. I love the blouse.
Thank you.
It's so springy, almost summer, right? We're getting there.
We're getting there.
Yes.
I was just telling you, this is going to be my first summer in Busan. So
Oh, beware.
I'm excited and I'm aware too.
Humidity coming.
Yes.
All right. Let's dive into our first story. We've been talking about the U.S. debt ceiling on Morning Wave. We've been following that story, but from what I understand, as of broadcast time, there's no agreement yet, right? Is that correct?
That's true.
Okay.
So yes, it's very much been in the news, and the debt ceiling is, of course, the spending limit set by the U.S. Congress, which decides how much money they can borrow. So President Biden and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy, had their latest meeting on Monday local time. So after the meeting, McCarthy, who's a Republican, commented that the discussion was productive, but not enough to reach a deal. And President Biden stated that that default is off the table, and the only way to move forward is a bipartisan agreement.
So let's talk about the deadline. When is it exactly for this debt ceiling?
So the federal government currently has a borrowing limit of $31.5 trillion, and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has said that failure to reach a deal to raise that limit by June 1st could result in the government defaulting on its debt. The tone of the recent talk did appear to be more optimistic after weeks of divisive partisan discourse between the Republicans and Democrats, but it's unclear how quickly the two sides can reach a deal. It'll take several days for Congress to deliberate and pass any legislation out of a deal, so McCarthy stressed that a deal needs to be reached this week to give Congress enough time to meet the deadline.
Right, they are running out of days. It's already, 23rd their time, 24th our time. So what are the stances of the two parties?
The Republicans are trying to bring the spending down to remedy this. For instance, they're proposing expanding work requirements for some federal aid programs, such as Medicaid. So what this means is they're proposing that people who receive food stamps or financial aid should be actively seeking work or enrolled in an education program. For existing work requirements, they want to raise the maximum age from 49 to 55 and limit the ability of the states to offer exemptions. Republicans are reportedly calling for as much as a $100 billion cut to next year's spending. And on the other hand, the Democrats are trying to avoid this because they want to avoid cuts to the federal spendings, especially to new programs and spendings approved during the first 2 years of Biden's presidency.
I see.
Now, the Senate Democrats, led by Bernie Sanders, are requesting Biden to use his authority under the 14th Amendment to continue paying the U.S. government's bills, even if the debt ceiling is not raised. It seems like both Biden and McCarthy are under immense pressure from their respective parties to hold the line.
Well, what impact would the U.S. debt default, of course, hoping, praying that it doesn't happen, but what would that bring to the world?
So it would happen in a sort of a chain reaction. The U.S. government would stop giving out welfare payments and support to Americans, which would affect their ability to spend and pay their bills.
Right.
Now, this would tip the U.S. into recession. And since the U.S. is one of the biggest trading partners globally, it would start buying less products from the rest of the world. This would lead to the rise of mortgages and unemployment in other countries. And also the value of the dollar is expected to drop sharply in this case. Now, this sounds like good news for people outside of the U.S., but there would be a panic in the market and everything would have to be repriced, which in economic terms is a risk premium.
Yes.
So globally, we would get a risk premium added to prices and all of the prices would subsequently increase.
It's bad, and bad all around.
Certainly.
They need to get it together and come up with some sort of deal.
Hopefully.
Yes, and we'll, of course, report on that. Let's move on, though. The next one is regarding chocolate. Global trade in chocolate is leading to the destruction of forests in West Africa. And I have to say, I don't know. I love chocolate.
Yes, it's a favorite indulgent treat for so many of us. And last year, the global trade in chocolate was worth over a whopping $1 trillion.
Oh my goodness.
You can believe it.
That's a lot of chocolate.
And its most important ingredient, cocoa, is produced from the seed of the tropical Theobroma cacao tree. These trees are native to South America, but most of it is now produced in Africa, with 2/3 from Ivory Coast and Ghana. And studies are showing that cocoa farming is a major cause of deforestation in these areas. A team of researchers set out to map the extent of cocoa cultivation using satellite imagery, and they discovered that cocoa was being farmed on over 1.5 million hectares of protected forest areas in Ghana and Ivory Coast. In certain protected forests, almost 80% of the land had been cleared out completely just to grow cocoa.
Oh, now I feel really guilty for enjoying chocolate. Well, the cocoa industry is also known, though, for its human rights violations regarding especially child labor trafficking and really harsh working conditions.
That's actually quite closely connected to deforestation. The director for Ghana and Nigeria for the Rainforest Alliance said that the single most significant driver of deforestation in cocoa production is poverty. Cocoa farmers in West Africa make a very meager living, making less than $1 a day. So basically receiving less than 6% of a chocolate bar's retail price. And due to the complex network of middlemen, the supply chain is not transparent, and this has made cocoa production a haven for human rights abuses, unfortunately, such as the illegal child labor issue. And the farmers are pushed more and more into poverty. So it's a vicious cycle. Now, also, cocoa farmers are on the front lines of the climate crisis, which leaves them vulnerable to drought, pests, and diseases that can decimate a harvest.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. And these big chocolate multinational corporations, they are taking note and taking initiatives, but it seems like it's not enough yet.
I see. All right. On that depressing note, we're going to have to move to our third story. This is all about Brazil declaring an animal health emergency after cases of, we're talking about the bird flu again.
Yes, again. So an animal health emergency has been declared across Brazil for the next 6 months as a precaution after the highly pathogenic H5N1 avian influenza virus was detected in wild birds. 7 cases have been reported in the Espírito Santo state and another discovered in the Rio de Janeiro state, which are fortunately far away from the areas where the chicken meat production mostly happens in the country. Now, it turns out Brazil is the world's largest exporter of chicken meat.
Right.
With annual sales of nearly $10 billion.
Yes.
The H5N1 infection in wild birds does not trigger trade bans based on guidelines of the World Organization for Animal Health. However, a case of bird flu on a farm usually results in the entire flock being killed and can trigger trade restrictions from importing countries.
Indeed, indeed. Thanks for reporting on all the news, but we do have to get to This Week in History because I love this part.
Yes. This week in 1977,
oh my gosh,
the movie Star Wars Wars opened in theaters for the first time. Director George Lucas's blockbuster Star Wars hit the American theaters 46 years ago. This movie became a bona fide culture phenomenon and spawned a total of 9 films and numerous animated shows, live-action shows. And before the movie premiered, there was an extensive marketing push. So on opening night, the lines in front of the movie theaters across the country were a sight to behold.
Ooh.
And in Korean theaters, it opened a year after, in 1978.
That's a little factoid. And so if you're old enough to have gone to see the original in the theater,
yes,
that should date you, kind of. And I, for one, did not watch the original on the screen, just to let you know.
But yeah, it was a big hit and
Yes.
still continues to be.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for all the international news and for all the news during this season. We appreciate it. And we're checking in with you next season, right?
Yes, I'll be back.
All right, Han is back. All right, everybody, that was international news. And I'll be back in a moment.
Busan has proved to be the globally competitive host city of many major international events such as 2005 APEC Summit, 2011 High-Level Forum on Aid Effectiveness, and 2014 ITU Conference. Now, we aspire to host the 2030 World Expo here in Busan.
2030 Busan World Expo will be a gift to our future generations.
Busan is the place to be to connect to Eurasia and to the world and experience the future.
We create our future in our home city of Busan. Future, innovation, progress. 2030 Busan World Expo.
Morning Wave in Busan wakes you up with trendy music, hot issues, and the most updated news every morning. Begin your day with Morning Wave in Busan with Catherine.
It is time for Global Busan Focus. That means Stephanie's here. Good morning. Happy Hump Day.
Happy Hump Day.
Oh, yay. We are so moving away from black, you and I. We're trying so hard.
We are trying really hard. This is like probably the last one I have without the color black. Oh, gosh.
Back to back tomorrow.
Yes.
What is our topic for today?
So today we're going to be talking about Korean films and Korean film industry.
Ooh.
For that, I interviewed 조근식 한국영화 아카데미 원장, or the director of the Korean Academy of Film Arts, Mr. 조근식. Now, this year marks the 40th anniversary of Korean Academy of Film Arts, and the Academy over the years have fostered some of the leading Korean film directors, such as Mr. Bong Joon-ho, Ho Jin-ho, Jang Jun-hwan, and Choi Dong-hoon. And it's considered a world-renowned film school where quality K-content is made and spread.
Yes.
So for our first clip, Mr. Cho Gun-sik will introduce the Korean Academy of Film Arts. Let's take a listen.
네, 저희 한국영화 아카데미는 1984년도에 영화진흥위원회에서 설립한 최초의 국립영화학교인데요. 칸 영화제 황금 종려상과 아카데미 감독상을 수상한 봉준호 감독을 비롯해서 허진호 감독님, 장준환 감독님, 최동훈 감독님 등 한국의 대표적인 영화 감독들과 촬영 감독, 프로듀서, 교수, 영화 평론가 등 약 40년 동안 750여 명의 한국 영화의 핵심 인력을 배출한 학교이고요. 또 저희 한국영화 아카데미는 기초적인 이론보다는 현장 실습 위주의 소수 정예 교육으로 운영 중이고요. 2018년도에 부산으로 이전해서 현재 광안동에 위치하고 있습니다. 그리고 저희가 올해로 40주년을 맞이했고요. 얼마 전에 끝난 전주영화제에서 한국영화 아카데미 특별전을 통해 약 40편의 단편을 소개한 것을 비롯해서 국내외 영화제에서 다양한 특별전 행사 및 40주년 기념 다큐멘터리 제작과 출판 전시 등 40주년을 맞이해서 올해 이런저런 기념 행사들도 준비하고 있습니다.
Can you tell us what he said?
So he said the Korean Academy of Film Arts, also known as KAFA, is the first national film school established by the Korean Film Council back in 1984. KAFA has produced about 750 Korean filmmakers over the past 40 years, including director Bong Joon-ho, who, as we all know, won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, as well as Academy Award for Best Director. And also, KAFA provides elite education focused on hands-on training in the field rather than basic theory. He said Academy moved to Busan in 2018 and is now located in Gwangan-dong. And as they celebrate 40 years, there was a special event introducing 40 short films as part of the special exhibition for KAFA at the Jeonju Film Festival. And they're also preparing other special projects and programs like documentary about the history of KAFA.
Yes. It's really great to hear about the history of this organization, and it's in Busan.
Yeah.
Well, tell us more.
Now, as we know, the 2023 Cannes Film Festival is officially underway in France.
Yes.
And a total of 7 films, which includes short and feature-length films from Korea, were invited to Cannes this year. And that is the most number that we've seen so far. And one of those films is by a director who graduated from the Korean Academy of Film Arts. A graduate of the 39th class of KAFA, Ms. Hwang Hae-in, and her film titled Whole had been invited to the Cannes Film Festival. And the film was shot in Busan's Yeongju-dong Simin Apart, and it's about a social worker who discovers a big manhole in a room while making a visit at a home for her work.
Oh no.
And the film was invited to the festival's La Cinef section, which showcases short films from film school students from around the world. And he shared that this year only 16 out of a total of 2,000 entries were invited.
Oh.
So definitely an accomplishment. And as I mentioned, the most number of films from Korea had been invited this year. So I asked him what he thinks is the reason Korean films are getting so much interest. Let's take a listen.
한국 영화가 이렇게 각광받는 이유는 제 생각에는 한국 영화는 다른 곳에서 쉽게 찾아볼 수 없는 무엇보다 독특한 이야기의 힘과 개성이 있다고 생각하고요.
네.
그거는 아마도 다이나믹하고 변화를 받아들이기를 주저하지 않는 한국 사회의 특성, 그리고 개성 있는 작가들을 꾸준히 뒷받침하고 투자해온 여러 관계자들의 노력이 쌓여져 온 결과라고 생각합니다. 저희 한국영화 아카데미 역시 여러 앞선 선배들의 노력을 이어받아서 이런 다양하고 개성 있는 작가들을 더 많이 키워내서 한국 영화를 세계 속에 더 알리고 각광을 이어갈 수 있도록 더 열심히 해야겠죠.
And what did he say in this clip?
So he said Korean movies have the power and personality and their unique stories that are not easily found elsewhere. The interest is a result of the efforts of various stakeholders who have been steadily supporting and investing in Korean filmmakers, as well who do not hesitate to accept change. KAFA will also not hesitate to put in the efforts to promote Korean films to the world and continue to spotlight and cultivate more diversity in films.
Yes, and for those of you who are tuning in right now, we're listening to clips from the director of the Korean Academy of Film Arts, KAFA, Mr. Cho Keun-sik.
That's right. Now, some say that Korean film industry may face trouble due to the popularity of streaming platforms. So let's take a listen as Mr. Cho Keun-sik shares his thoughts on this.
네, 그동안 전 세계가 이제 팬데믹을 거치면서 OTT가 급속도로 성장하고 반면에 극장을 중심으로 한 전통적인 영화 산업이 많이 위축이 되었습니다.
네.
그래서 많은 분들이 이런 상황에 대해 걱정을 많이 하고 계신 것으로 알고 있고요. 그래서 지금 여러 영화 관계자들께서 극장이 어려운 상황이고 극장을 살리는 일이 아주 중요하다고 생각하고 애쓰시는 것으로 알고 있고요. 저는 OTT와 극장 중심의 산업이 서로 배타적인 관계가 아니라 상생의 관계여야 한다고 생각하고 있습니다. 되돌아보면 이제껏 한국 영화는 언제나 위기였고 변화의 중심에 있었고요. 위기는 또 항상 한국 영화를 한 단계 발전시킨 기회가 되기도 했고요. 이번에도 한국 영화의 중심에 있는 여러 관계자들이 이런 변화들을 한국 영화를 한 단계 더 발전시킬 기회로 만들어낼 것이라고 믿고 기대하고 있습니다.
And what did he say in the final clip?
So he said during the pandemic, OTT or streaming platforms had grown rapidly, while the traditional film industry centered on theaters or cinema shrank a lot. He knows that many theaters are struggling, so help for our theaters is important. And OTT, the theater center industry, both should cooperate with one another to create a win-win situation. He said Korean movies have always been at the center of change and crisis, and the crisis has always been an opportunity for Korean cinema to develop to next level. So he hopes that through these times, efforts will be made to further develop Korean cinema.
Oh, indeed. And I feel like Korean cinema has come such a far way. So absolutely wonderful to hear about KAFA. What about for tomorrow? What can we look forward to?
Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about work-life balance in Busan with the director of the Busan Work-Life Balance Center.
All right. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Bye-bye.
This was Global Busan Focus. Well, once again, we talked about the launch of the Nuri rocket. It is due to launch tonight at 6:24 p.m. And a successful launch would verify South Korea's capacity to operate a space vehicle to carry payload satellites into the target orbit. So it is loaded with 8 practical satellites that have their own respective missions in space. We are definitely going to be looking forward to tonight as we count down. Real quick, Seimi Choi-nim, favorite quote, think globally, act locally. Tommy-nim, life is a challenge. Well, I'm going to end it on that note. Thank you for joining us today. Final song for today is this one, 추적이는 여름 비가 되어 by 장범준. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.
안녕이라 그 말은 하지 마세요. 우리는 다시 만날 테니 그냥 웃으며 걸어가요. 그만하자 그 말도 하지 말고요. 언젠간 다시 만날 텐데 그냥 웃으며 걸어봐요. 넌 어떤 마음으로 또 생각에 잠겨 이 길을 걷나요. 네가 원한다면 흐린 날에 안녕이라 그 말은 하지 마세요. 우리는 다시 만날 테니.
지그재그로 움직인대.
누가?
척추라인에 맞춰서 움직인대.
누가?
누구긴 누가 엔모션 프로지. 척추를 지그재그로 틀어 꾹꾹 눌러주는 움직임. 누가의 시그니처 모션. 누가 베스트 엔모션 프로. 가까운 누가페에서 만나요. 의료기기 광고입니다.
부산을 한 장의 사진에 담는다면 어디로 가야 할까요?